And with that, I'd like to invite up to the stage Jonathan Fuchs.
So why don't we, you hear me? Everything okay? So why don't we come on up?
My staff could
Karen and Karim and Gina. Oh, great. So we're get ourselves organized here. We're waiting for Dr. Osama.
That's it.
Everything gets organized, but at the last minute things fall apart. That's him. Here he is. There he is. Last but not least. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Are we all right? Okay. So I'm Jonathan Fuchs. I want to thank you very much for... Doesn't this work? Am I not on? Do I have a mic? Why don't I just use that? Why don't I just use this? Okay. I don't need this. Here we are at a technology conference, and we're all messed up technology-wise. There we go. Good morning. All right. So let me introduce our great panel today. We have a number of very distinguished people. Karim Babay, who you met yesterday with Health Sapiens, which is a company that helps patients navigate through complicated healthcare systems on a 24-hour basis. We have Karen Keeley, who is the Director of Business Development Bioservices, Precision for Medicine, for rare and orphan expertise, and is advisor to Ramadi Life Sciences Blockchain chapter. And more importantly, she's mom to a special needs child, which is she's our consumer representative today. Gina Malak, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of BlockInterop, which is a IT solutions company helping companies with the understand artificial intelligence and blockchain. And we also have Dr. Osama Elhassan, who is the vice chair, Emirates Health Information Society and Health Information, and with the Dubai Health Association. So, Dubai Health Authority. So, we have talked over the last day and a half of a number of use cases. We've heard about provider credentialing. We heard it this morning from Mazen. Supply chain, clinical trials, pharma and opioid supply chain activities, disruptive activity relative to insurance and claims activity, revenue cycle management, and financial fraud. So what we want to talk about today, excuse me, is to focus on and have a conversation relative to health data integration and the blockchain. And this is probably the most intricate part of it, only because you're now talking about patient data, which is more a confidentiality issue. You're talking about scale, as we heard from just a few moments ago, and the question of how do you integrate all the varied and myriad data sources throughout the healthcare system to impact not only wellness, but quality of care and appropriateness. So with that, we have these four panelists to talk about proof of concept, to talk about consumerism, to talk about patient incentives, and also to talk about interoperability. So if I might add, start off with Dr. Elhassan, who, if I might add, gets the gold standard for asking questions yesterday. He was quite erudite in that regard. If he might address some of the issues related to the proof of concept relative to healthcare data integration.
Hi, how are you? So my name is Osama. I work for Dubai Health Authority. Can you hear me now?
No.
So my name is Osama Elhassan. I work for Dubai Health Authority. as a specialist in health informatics and smart health department. With regard to the use cases of blockchain, as you know that this is one of the key issues that we have today is to select the POC, the right proof of concept to start with. And there are a lot of elements that comes into that. So from our experience, we realize that the more number of I can say authorities or regulated agencies working in the same POC, it will be more complicated. It will be more complicated to bring all those stakeholders at the same page. However, this will be a more useful use case. So just can give you the example of the DHA use case that we are trying to implement as Sharian. So we think that this was a perfect use case to start with, because DHA is a regulator for the licensing for all of Dubai. This is one thing. And the second thing, that we have counterparts in Ministry of Health, in the Dubai Healthcare City, to test the way of having this decentralized way of doing licensing. So we can get some results locally in our environment that we can control, and then we can propagate this slowly to our counterparts, and then we can think about having this at the regional level or whatever. So it's very, very difficult to find these kind of use cases where you can control it in the beginning and then propagate it in a very systematic way. So this is a very scalable use case. It's very difficult to get this kind of use cases. The other type of use cases, which will be targeting audience or patients, whatever. So here we have to work around things like patient incentives, what's in it for me, and here we need to have the support of the insurance companies, because only insurance and insurance regulation are the one who can really work and play around this and make allow people to be part of it by through incentives. So these are from our experience, these are the two types of use cases. One that we are fully controlled, because we are the license, we already have the stamp with us. This is easy to maneuver. But things that need collaboration from other parties that we don't have control in, then incentives will play a key role.
Thank you. Karim, there's a prediction that there's a $300 billion a year loss in untapped data generation. And in terms of providing for patient incentive and engagement, in terms of helping address that issue, do you have any suggestions or thoughts?
Sure. We do believe that the current healthcare system, and I think yesterday I mentioned there's around 40 of them, 40 countries, but 4 major healthcare systems. None of them is really tackling the core issue of we only dealing with patients when they become sick, and there is no mechanism by which providers of care and seekers of care seek to interact with each other, and the right incentive is put in place. Do believe that gamifications via tokenization or any new mechanism that could be implemented in a fair way will actually allow patients and doctor to properly re-engage and be able to streamline the process, which is very cumbersome, regardless of the lack of data interoperability. So I think it has been proven, at least in our case, that we can reduce healthcare costs by 30% by just reducing the number of intermediaries. And if you provide, and that without even no incentive put in place. If you put the incentive in place, we do believe that the savings could be meaningful. So I think re-engaging the patients and the doctor, because at the end of the day, the principals are the one who are not really benefiting the most from any healthcare system. And without patients or doctor, there couldn't be any healthcare system. So forget about the insurance or any regulation for the time being. So let's put a system that actually works best for patients or citizens.
Thank you. Karen, you're our consumer representative.
I am.
How do you think blockchain impacts on the consumer aspect of the patient pathway?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. I have kind of a different background than everyone here. I'm not a programmer. I'm a mom of a special needs kid. I also work in biotech, and I day trade and been into crypto and understand the fintech side of things. So I can see all the stakeholders' views. And I'm a mom of a patient, so I've been through 20 years. He has autism. So I've been in that system and working with all these stakeholders. And now I'm on the other side working for Precision for Medicine. They're a global CRO, clinical research organization. So now I see the other side. So I can kind of see all these stakeholders and what they're doing. The main thing that I have noticed is that people don't communicate. The patient pathway is kind of disjointed. So if you're in tech, you're assuming the patient knows something. If you're in the pharmacy, the pharma side, you're assuming the researchers and the patients know something, but there's not a lot of communication across all of these stakeholders. So I think, and you have to understand that as a lay person, a mom, a lot of people that I work with, even in biotech, do not know what blockchain is. They don't understand it. Most of my girlfriends don't even know what it is. So you're dealing with a population that doesn't know what it is. And do they need to know what it is? Maybe not. Maybe they just need to know it's real world evidence, whatever you want to call it. It's going to work like the internet does. And it's going to make your life easier. And information is going to be able to be shared easier. And so I see, coming from my point of view, I've just had genetic testing done on my son, and it's taken me 4 years. I'm in the industry, and I'm a big believer in standard of care. Genetic testing is standard of care as a baseline, so that can lay on top of a blockchain with electronic health records, wearables, all that data, and some kind of biometric medical ID, so that it can be accessed and transportable, and the patient will have control of the information. Once they have control and realize that they can really affect their health and they're part of the journey, I think it's going to make a big difference. They need buy-in, I think, and a lot of education. The researchers need to talk to pharma. They need to both talk to patients. They all need to understand what is going on. There's a lot of education that needs to happen. I think you guys are ahead of the curve. I'm from San Diego and kind of a backwater tech-wise, which you wouldn't think, but it is. I think the East Coast is a little bit ahead of us. But that's my take on it. I see it happening. I know it's going to happen, and it's going to be used across healthcare. It may not be called blockchain. It was funny, there's a conference that I'm going to the end of next month, pharma conference. I was reading through the agenda, real world evidence all over the agenda. Nobody knows that that's blockchain that's going in my company. They don't know. So it's going to kind of come in the back door. It's happening.
Gina, you're our entrepreneur on this panel. The Healthcare Financial Management Association in America says that 70% of healthcare executives believe that interoperability and data exchange competencies are vital to their future, to meeting not only profitability, but their value-based activity. So could you talk about the interoperability challenges that these systems face relative to not only blockchain, but just in general in terms of data integration?
Hello, everyone. So yes, these challenges that we're having with interoperability is that a lot of legacy systems are still on HL7. So you have to have some type of engine to translate HL7 to what we call FHIR standard. So right now, hospitals are adapting to FHIR standards right now. So that is web-based, where you're using web-based cloud solutions. But however, there's a lot of legacy systems such as pharmacy systems, billing systems, cardiology systems, scheduling systems. Some of the ancillary systems are still HL7. So you have middleware such as CorePoint, Rhapsody, Orion, Rhapsody, Qvera, just to name a few of engines that has translation, can translate HL7 to Fire, which is web-based, so that we can be able to enable blockchain services. Also, some of the concerns are timestamps. HL7 has an exact timestamp, but by the time it gets to the blockchain, there's a different timestamp. So there are some case studies going on right now and some testing and development it's currently going on right now to make sure that we have exact timestamp as the actual medical records. And so that is some of our challenges that we're having right now. However, there is quite a few studies and organizations that are currently doing feasibility studies as well as development and testing so that we can have a more sure and accurate interoperability between hospital systems, legacy systems that will be able to be web-based, cloud-based, that be able to be interfaced with the blockchain.
Thank you. There have been studies that show that data analytics and population health goals often run counter to the academic and research environment. Given Karim and Gina and even Karen, given your experiences working with health systems, how do you see that being mitigated over time?
I think there's a huge gap. I think Karen just mentioned, I think all stakeholders require an immense level of education and going again back into creating the right incentives. I think the incentives at the core are misaligned. So what makes an insurance carrier or a health system profitable may not translate into what's best for the patients. I can cite numerous examples. My wife, for instance, had to undergo surgery last March. The follow-up was supposed to take place within a week. Unfortunately, that doctor works for a specific health system without naming it. It's become pretty challenging to provide a continuity of care because you cannot even reach back to the doctors. The doctor is pretty much aware of it, but the incentive is not there for the doctor. The doctors have given up their practice and they actually decided to work for the hospital systems at the expense of the patients. And so I think there's a lot of consolidation is happening in the industry. We do believe that at one point in time this has to stop because it's counterproductive to the overall healthcare system.
Great. Karen, do you have any comments?
I have an interesting case that I just thought of. As a mom of a special needs kid, some other friends of mine are in similar situations, and I did work in the rare and orphan space for a few years under a different CRO. And there was one instance that I thought was really interesting about talking and communication. My girlfriend and colleague Monica, her son has SYNGAP. She only knew one person that had it, and it was her son. It's a very rare disease. She was one of these power moms, did the research, found one man that was doing a mouse study. I don't know if you heard me. He was doing a mouse study on SYNGAP in Florida. She flew down to talk with him and take him to lunch. And he asked her, what would you do, different, if you could have anything, if your son could change in any way, what would you do? And she said, if you could talk to me, that would be fabulous. Well, in the mouse study, the researcher said, you know what, the mice can't move their mouths. But to him, that didn't make any difference. But he was looking at the study at a different perspective. And so he changed his entire study because of her comment. So just that conversation changed that study, and now hundreds of kids that have been diagnosed with SYNGAP are being treated differently because of that study. So it just takes the conversations of these different stakeholders to make a huge difference.
Dr. Elhassan?
So yes, we're talking about population health. This is a result of connected care. So we cannot achieve population health results or data without making sure that all systems are talking to each other. Yes, incentives are very good, but sometimes government should use the stick as well. So even now in the US, they have just recently, the ONC deployed the non-blocking regulation and forced even all vendors to open up their systems for connectivity. Now, even in the UAE, just 4 weeks away, back, we launched a new regulation for ICT for healthcare. This regulation is very powerful because actually it allows the government to have what we call the health information exchange across UAE. And this will make sure that all hospitals in the UAE will open up their systems for building what we call a unified health record. So my data will follow me as a patient wherever I go. This is very important. This requires a huge effort and requires a regulatory framework that supports it. And we did the major step by launching this law.
Thank you. Gina, did you have any comment on that? And then we'll have one last question, and then we'll open up to the audience.
Okay. Yes, I think it does take a buy-in for HIEs, Health Information Exchange, as well. So, there are Epic, Allscripts, Cerner. They have open platforms now. My company is working with Epic. We have a partnership with Epic Systems that we will be able to build applications on their platform so that now we're being able to open. And with my company being in partnership with Patientory, which is an ecosystem, so now we're building an ecosystem so that collaborative, you have HIEs, you have hospital systems, you have providers through applications can be able to integrate through a robust ecosystem utilizing blockchain. And so it does take adoption from education as well as stakeholder buy-ins and, a lot of marketing and going out and coming to conferences like this, meeting stakeholders, meeting with decision makers to be able to collectively understand the interoperability and the benefits of blockchain and how we can build a robust system together so that we can collectively integrate and working with companies such as Epic, Cerner, and Allscripts that have open platforms to build applications with companies like my company, BlockInterop, to be able to build applications to integrate with those companies and those systems and then work with their customers as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
May I add something? I think I'm just going to be a little bit of the rebel here, but I think it's important, right? I think there's no such a thing as being half pregnant. I mean, you either are pregnant or you're not. And I think in order for us to really talk about population health, like Doctor just mentioned, we need to have not only interoperability, but we need to bring market forces, to the biggest market in the world, which is healthcare. So there's two ways around it. Either you create a consumer-driven healthcare system, which so sorely needed, and the idea that the consumer is not ready yet to get educated about their healthcare, and that's why you need intermediaries, whether it's insurance carriers or brokers or you name it. That's actually not true. I mean, I think people spend more time shopping for their cars and they become almost car expert for something that is actually trivial perhaps or less important than their health. And I think in instances, patients or caring, when you're struck by a disease, you become as knowledgeable as the doctors, sometimes even more. So I think because you research, because you care. And I think having the information available is extremely important. So you have two solutions. Either you open up the market or you have, like the UAE or perhaps Estonia does, it's directed by the government because there's less institutionalization in the country and therefore you bring the fluidity. And I think there's no two ways about it. Otherwise, we're just going to have multiple ecosystems. They don't talk to each other, different incentives. And quite frankly, we can no longer afford healthcare, at least in the U.S.
Right.
It's becoming too expensive.
Right. And there's another statistic I'll throw out there that it's predicted by 2025, not 2021 as the young lady mentioned before, but 2025, 55% of healthcare applications will be blockchain. So there is going to be a cultural imperative, a marketing imperative, a commercial imperative, and a quality imperative that will force, we hope, the adoption. But more importantly, it will force the business community to improve the capability of the blockchain so it's not energy consuming as much, it's not limited in its capability. And Any final thoughts before we open up to the questions? Should we go to the audience? Let's go to the audience. Any questions to our wonderful panel here? Put on my other glasses so I can see you. Any questions for the group? Yes, sir. Can we get a microphone to this gentleman? Can we get a microphone? There we go. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for your time today, and I appreciate the panelists' transparency and what's going on in the market. My name is Cody Hill, and I work for Houston Methodist Health System based in Houston, Texas. And I live and work in Dubai. I've been here 4 years, and it's actually really exciting to see that we're looking towards the future on how to incorporate this technology into making patient care a lot safer, a lot better. So I have had the chance to meet with some of you or your companies since being here, and one of the big challenges I see is the disparate nature of health systems and disparate nature of nations and regulatory environments, which is going to make it extremely challenging for us to connect all these pieces. I had a patient this week in Dubai who wanted to send information back to the United States. So that information, their medical record is going to live in several different places and will today not be connected in any meaningful way. If that patient wants to have some continuity, they have to take the initiative and find out ways to bring their information to each and every provider. So how do you envision these patients accelerating their learning in such a way that they understand that their information is going to be connected throughout the duration of their life? I mean, that's the vision, right? Is that we'll be able to take this record and, from the time I'm born to the time that I die, I will have the ability to bring it from each stage in the continuum of care. How do you see these patients being empowered?
Starting young. I mean, really, from the very beginning, and I think what we're seeing in not only education, but the capability of youngsters from a technological standpoint and their comfort using devices, that the ability to translate that into a personal health record and managing that themselves will be very comfortable. You see that now with physicians using electronic healthcare records. The older docs are resistant for a period of time, and they reluctantly accept it or they retire, and the younger physicians are walking around with tablets having the time of their life. And so I think it's a generational thing, it's an educational thing, and we're on a long journey here. This is not going to happen overnight, but it comes back to what are the business imperatives, what are the reimbursement imperatives, what are the capabilities of the system to be trusted and to be accurate and to produce information and data that is valuable, that makes sense. Not to do it because we need to do it because someone has regulated it, but because there's a rationale for it that is productive. Any comments from the panel? Karen?
Yeah, I have, these millennials, they're figuring stuff out. They're figuring out their data is valuable. My daughter came home recently from college and the Red Cross was there and they, to donate blood. And she's like, didn't do it because I don't know where my blood and my information is going. And I'm like, oh, well, she must be listening to me. So they're starting to figure out that this data
Probably is shuffling between two countries, and therefore they have two different, historical data. I mean, self custody. We implemented that actually at Health Sapiens. So your electronic medical record is yours. So you can actually click on a PDF, it downloads it, and you can share it with anybody you want, because we think it's extremely important to build a system that is able to talk to other systems. But self-custody, tokenization perhaps, it's extremely important. You have your own key whereby you co-share it, you share it, you monetize it if you want. If you pass away, you can even, that's actually an interesting debate. I mean, data is value. It could be like a real asset. It could even get transferred to your offspring if you want to.
Gina?
Yeah, tokenization is a really big platform. Being able to have, like you're saying, but your data is very valuable, and these millennials are finding out that data is valuable. So now there are companies out there that are giving incentives. You know, you have your Fitbits, you know, and you could be able to download your vital signs, you know, and tokenize that and have incentives. The applications that I'm working with Epic, they have what they call MyChart, and you can be able to have your medical records, you know, pretty much with your silo hospital. And then you have companies like Patientory, where you can probably perhaps integrate your MyChart and your other medical records, you know, into one, one system. But it does take education. You know, we need a viral campaign, kind of like a Facebook or Snapchat or any type of social marketing mechanism, you know, that will provide some type of incentive, and then, a campaign that will encourage hospitals, providers, and the consumers to participate. But we're in a long road for that, but it is certainly something that is in our near future that we see that's coming, that will eventually come together.
Thank you. And for the last word?
I remember maybe 8 years ago, if you remember, the initiative of Health Vault that was pushed by Microsoft. It was almost 8 or 9 years. They spent a lot of money, a lot of efforts on creating this, what we call patient-driven healthcare medical record. It didn't work for one reason, because it was not associated with a framework of trust framework that allows to seamlessly connect with whatever EMR. Because if the data is managed or written or controlled by patient, doctors normally will not trust it. Doctors all normally trust other doctors, but not patients. It's one of the challenges.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So again, it comes back to the openness of healthcare systems, and also it also has a regulatory part that how we can build a trust model. So if there's a data breach, where I should go, whom should I sue if there is a damage for someone steals my data. This is the key question that we have. Trust on data and regulatory layer that allows us to understand how data is moving, who is consuming the data, does he have the right to consume it or not.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Well, let me close by telling you a personal story. And I was speaking at Orlando about 3 or 4 months ago, and you know that's where Disney World is and Harry Potter and all these amusement parks. And it was the end of a conference, and one by one people were leaving either to meet their family or to go home or catch an airplane. And by the end of my presentation, there was only one person left. And after my presentation, I went down to him and I said, "Thank you very much for staying. I really appreciate it." To which he said, "Think nothing of it. I'm the next speaker." So I want to thank you for hanging out with us, and we really appreciate it. And our next speaker, though, is Marquesa Finch to close us out. Thank you very much. And thank our panel.